Families are supposed to be fair. At least that's what I always believed. We may not be rich, but when parents give, they should give with both hands equally. Or so I thought. When my brother announced he was starting a business, the family showered him with support. $50,000, just like that. And me? I got a coffee mug with my name on it. That day I smiled politely, but deep down I made a decision. If they thought I'd stay quiet, they were wrong. It started at a Sunday dinner, one of those big family gatherings where the table groans under the weight of casseroles and roast beef, and the air smells of garlic bread and laughter. My parents sat at the head, proud as always, while my brother held court like the star of the show. He had that confident grin on his face, the one he always wore when he thought the spotlight belonged to him. "Guess what?" he said, clinking his glass to get attention. "I'm starting my own business," finally taking the leap. The table erupted in applause. Everyone cheered. Aunt Linda nearly cried with excitement. Mom and Dad beamed like he'd just won a Nobel Prize. I clapped too, because that's what you do. You clap, you smile, even when you feel the sting of being overshadowed yet again. Then came the moment that made my stomach twist. My parents exchanged a glance. Then my father cleared his throat. "Son," he said, "we want you to succeed. We believe in you. So we've decided to give you some help to get started." He slid an envelope across the table. My brother opened it, and his eyes widened. He pulled out a check. $50,000, he said, his voice cracking with fake humility. I don't know what to say." The room exploded with congratulations. My brother hugged Dad, hugged Mom, kissed them both on the cheek. He held that check up like a trophy, soaking in the admiration. And me, I sat there, my fork paused halfway to my mouth, trying to keep the smile frozen on my face. $50,000. Just like that. Then Mom turned to me, her smile just as bright. "And for you, sweetheart, we didn't forget. We got you something too." She reached under the table and handed me a gift bag. I opened it, hoping, just for a second, that maybe they'd thought of me too. Inside was a coffee mug, white ceramic, printed with the words, "World's Best Daughter." I forced a laugh. "Well, thank you, it's lovely." The table chuckled politely. Someone even said, "Perfect for your morning coffee." And just like that, the spotlight shifted back to my brother. But inside, my chest burned. A coffee mug. That was my worth compared to $50,000. I excused myself early that night, claiming a headache. But when I got home, I sat in the dark kitchen, turning that mug over and over in my hands. The words mocked me. "World's best daughter." Maybe I wasn't worth $50,000, but I was worth more than this. And if they couldn't see that on their own, then I was going to show them. In the days after that dinner, I tried to shrug it off. I told myself it wasn't worth getting upset about. After all, it was just money, right? But no matter how many times I whispered that lie to myself, the bitterness grew. Every morning I opened the cupboard for coffee, and there it sat, the mug, stark white, with those bold black letters, "World's Best Daughter." I almost laughed at the irony. World's best, yet valued less than a down payment on a new car. Meanwhile, my brother's news spread through the family like wildfire. Aunts and uncles called to congratulate him. Cousins sent messages saying how proud they were. My phone stayed silent. Nobody asked how I was, what I was doing, or what dreams I had. It was as if the whole family had collectively decided that he was the golden child, and I was background. At Sunday service, the pastor even mentioned him during announcements. "We want to pray for Jason as he embarks on this new business journey. May God bless his endeavors." The congregation clapped. People turned to me, smiling, saying, "You must be so proud of your brother." I smiled back, teeth tight, my jaw aching. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. I didn't want his business, his plans, or even the money. What I wanted was acknowledgement, recognition that I mattered just as much, that my years of hard work, of caring for our parents when they were sick, of paying my own bills without ever asking for a handout, were worth something more than a novelty mug. But that acknowledgement never came. Instead, my brother began calling me for favors. "Hey, can you look over this contract for me? You've always been good with details. Could you stop by the office and help paint? I don't have the money to hire workers yet." The irony made me laugh bitterly. $50,000 in his pocket, and he still wanted free labor from me. One night, after hauling boxes into his new workspace until my back ached, I drove home with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Anger simmered in me, not just at him, but at myself. Why was I still saying yes? Why was I still playing the role of the supportive sister while he basked in glory, and I sipped from a mug that reminded me of my place in the family hierarchy? I set the mug down on the counter with a clink that echoed louder than it should have. And that's when the decision formed. I wasn't going to beg for fairness. I wasn't going to complain to my parents or plead for attention. No, if they couldn't see my worth, I would make them see it. Not by shouting, but by showing. I had skills my brother didn't. He was loud, charming, the kind of man who could sell ice to an Eskimo. But I was steady. I was practical. I knew how to plan, how to budget, how to work quietly until something real stood tall. That night, I opened my laptop and began typing. Not a rant, not an angry letter, but a plan. A business plan of my own. Something that would prove, once and for all, that I was more than the family afterthought. As the hours stretched into dawn, the bitterness that had been choking me shifted into something else, determination. And as I closed my laptop, exhausted but fueled with a strange sense of power, I whispered to myself, if they think a coffee mug is all I'm worth, they're about to learn how wrong they are. Once I had the plan written, I couldn't stop. It was like a fire had been lit inside me, one that had smoldered for years under layers of quiet compliance. For so long, I had let my brother take the spotlight. He was the entertainer, the dreamer, the one who made big promises. And me? I had been the helper, the one who quietly kept things moving, who made sure bills were paid, who never asked for much. But that night changed something. The insult of that coffee mug had peeled back the layers, and underneath, I found resolve. I decided to start small. I wasn't chasing a flashy business or a grand announcement at Sunday dinner. I chose something practical, something I loved, something that played to my strengths, catering. For years, people had praised my cooking at family events. "Your pies are better than the bakeries," Aunt Linda always said. "You should open a shop," friends urged. I had brushed it off before, too busy caring for others to think of myself. But now I leaned into it. I began by baking pies for neighbors, dropping them off with handwritten notes. "Thank you for supporting local." Word spread quickly. Soon I was fielding calls from friends of friends, people I barely knew, asking if I could bake for birthdays, anniversaries, even small office parties. Every evening after work, I stood in my kitchen, apron tied tight, flour dusting my counters, the house filled with the smell of cinnamon and butter, of roasted chicken and fresh bread. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Meanwhile, my brother's business was stumbling. His flashy office looked good on Instagram, but behind the scenes, bills piled up. I heard whispers from family, suppliers weren't being paid, deadlines were missed, investors were losing patience. Still, everyone rallied around him, pouring on sympathy and encouragement. "Every business struggles at first," Dad said at Sunday dinner. "He'll find his footing." I nodded politely, biting back the words on my tongue. Then one Saturday, my phone rang. It was my brother. His voice was tight, rushed. "Hey, sis. You're good with numbers, right? Can you come over and take a look at my books? Things aren't adding up." I almost laughed. $50,000 handed to him like candy, and now he wanted me, the one who got a mug, to clean up his mess. Still, I went. I sat at his desk, flipping through receipts, invoices, half-finished spreadsheets. The picture was clear. He had no system, no discipline, no plan. He had spent thousands on branding, on fancy furniture, on equipment he didn't need, while neglecting the basics. "You're bleeding money," I told him, plainly. He rubbed his forehead. "I just need more time, more capital." I stared at him. "You don't need more money. You need to respect what you already have. But you don't." He frowned, defensive, but deep down I knew he heard me. That night I drove home, my heart pounding, not with anger this time, but with clarity. He wasn't my rival. Not really. He was his own downfall. And me? I didn't need to sabotage him. I didn't need to beg our parents for fairness. All I needed to do was keep building quietly. Let my work speak. And soon enough, it did. Within months, my catering orders doubled. A local cafe approached me, asking if I could supply pies weekly. Then a wedding planner called. Word spread faster than I ever expected. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the background. I wasn't the afterthought. I was the one people were talking about. And as I deposited my first real check, more than I had ever earned in a single month, I couldn't help but smile. The mug still sat in my cupboard. But now, every time I saw it, I didn't feel bitterness. I felt motivation. Proof that being underestimated had become my greatest advantage. Revenge doesn't always come with shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes it's as simple as watching the truth unfold in front of everyone who doubted you. By the time summer rolled around, my catering business had grown beyond anything I expected. I wasn't just baking pies for birthdays anymore. I was providing full-course meals for offices, small weddings, even charity events. My phone buzzed constantly, and my evenings were filled with the steady rhythm of chopping, stirring, baking, and packaging. But the real turning point came when a local food festival reached out. They had heard about my pies through word of mouth and asked if I'd like to host a booth. I hesitated at first, me standing next to established restaurants and professional chefs, but something inside me whispered, "This is your moment." So I said yes. For 2 weeks straight, I barely slept, preparing dozens of pies, casseroles, and trays of cookies. When the festival day arrived, my booth was set up with a simple banner: Homegrown Comforts. Nothing flashy, just honest food and a warm smile. By noon, my booth had a line stretching down the block. People raved about the crust, the fillings, the way everything tasted like real home cooking. Local newspapers snapped photos. A food blogger posted, "Don't miss this booth. It's the heart of the festival." By the end of the weekend, I had sold out completely. And then came the cherry on top. A restaurant owner offered me a partnership. "We'd like to feature your desserts on our menu," he said. My hands shook as I signed the papers a week later. Meanwhile, my brother's business was crumbling. The suppliers had pulled out. His investors grew impatient. And one night at Sunday dinner, he admitted through gritted teeth, "I don't know if I can keep the shop open." The room fell silent. My parents shifted uncomfortably. Everyone looked at him with pity. And then, almost as an afterthought, someone mentioned me. "Did you hear about her booth at the festival?" Aunt Linda asked. "She was the talk of the event." My brother's jaw tightened. My parents' eyes darted toward me, surprised. "Really?" my father asked. "We didn't know." I smiled gently. "Yes, it went well. But I didn't brag. I didn't wave contracts in their faces. I didn't remind them of the mug in my cupboard or the $50,000 that had been handed to him. Instead, I let them sit with the contrast, their golden boy sinking while their quiet daughter rose on her own. That was the sweetest revenge of all. 2 weeks later, my parents invited me for coffee. I sat at their kitchen table, the same place where the mug had once been gifted. My father cleared his throat. "We may not have been fair," he admitted softly. "We thought Jason needed more support because, well, he always has. But we see now how strong you are. We're proud of you." For a moment, I felt the sting of all the years I had been overlooked. But then I felt something else, release. "I don't need fairness anymore," I said quietly. "I just needed to know my worth, and now I do." They nodded, their faces a mixture of regret and admiration. That night, I drove home and placed the mug back in the cupboard. I didn't smash it. I didn't throw it away. It stayed there, not as a symbol of bitterness, but as a reminder of how far I'd come. Because the truth was, I didn't need to get even with my brother or my parents. My success had already done that for me. Revenge wasn't about punishment. It was about proving, without a single word, that they had underestimated me. And now, every time I saw my brother struggle to keep his doors open while customers lined up outside mine, I felt the quiet, satisfying hum of justice. Looking back now, I realized the mug wasn't just a careless gift. It was a symbol, a reminder of the role my family had cast me in for years. The dependable one, the quiet one, the one who didn't need anything. My brother got the spotlight because he was dramatic, loud, and always on the edge of disaster. I got overlooked because I never demanded attention. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It teaches you resilience. It teaches you how to survive without applause. And when the time comes, it gives you the power to surprise everyone, including yourself. After the food festival and my new partnership with the restaurant, my life settled into a rhythm I had never known before. Orders flowed steadily. My kitchen became both sanctuary and battleground, a place where I poured my frustrations into pie dough and my hope into roasting pans. Each dish was more than food. It was proof. Proof that I wasn't the background character in my own story. One afternoon, as I boxed up a dozen pies for a corporate client, my brother stopped by. He looked smaller somehow, his shoulders hunched, his confidence chipped away. "Hey," he said softly, almost awkwardly. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry for before, for how it all went down." I wiped my hands on my apron and looked at him. For years, I had wanted this moment, to see him acknowledge the imbalance, the unfairness, the way he had always been carried while I was left standing. And yet, in that moment, I didn't feel victorious. I felt compassionate. "You don't need to apologize," I said gently. "You just need to figure out who you are without the handouts. That's the hard part." He nodded, his eyes downcast. I thought money would fix everything, but it doesn't. I handed him a slice of pie. No, it doesn't, but effort does. Consistency does. For the first time in years, we shared a quiet moment without rivalry. Later, as I sat in my living room sipping tea, I thought about my parents. I didn't resent them anymore. They had made a choice based on what they thought was need. They hadn't realized that by giving him so much, They had taken away his ability to grow. And by giving me so little, they had forced me to stand taller than I ever thought possible. It wasn't fair. But life rarely is. And maybe that was the lesson all along. Fairness isn't always something handed to us. Sometimes we have to create it ourselves. Over time, my parents became some of my biggest supporters. They brought friends to the restaurant to try my desserts. My mom bragged about my pies at her church group. My dad would sneak into my kitchen to watch me work, shaking his head with awe. "We didn't see it before," he said once, "but we see it now." I smiled, not out of bitterness, but out of peace, because I didn't need their validation anymore. I had built something that stood on its own. The coffee mug still sat in my cupboard. Sometimes I'd take it down just to hold it, to remind myself of where it all began. I'd trace the cheap lettering on the side and laugh softly to myself. They had given me a mug, thinking it was enough. But that mug became the spark for something far greater. And here's what I learned. Revenge doesn't always have to be cruel. Sometimes the sweetest form of it is success. Quiet, steady success that doesn't scream or boast, but shines so brightly it cannot be ignored. I used to think I wanted to get even. But the truth is, I didn't want equality anymore. I wanted to rise above, and I did. That was my lesson. That was my victory. And every pie I bake, every client I serve, every smile I see when someone takes that first bite, it all whispers the same truth back to me. I was worth more than a mug. I always was. In the end, my revenge wasn't about making my brother fail or shaming my parents. It was about proving to myself that I was never small, never less deserving, never just the one who gets by. They gave him money, and they gave me a mug. But what I built out of that imbalance, what I turned it into, was priceless. My brother may still be searching for his footing, but I found mine. My parents may regret their choices, but I've forgiven them, because the sweetest revenge wasn't payback. It was independence. And now every time I pour coffee into that same old mug, I smile. Not because of what they gave me, but because of what I made out of it.